Welcome back, kids, to another episode. Sit crooked, talk straight. I'm Katie Myers.
And I'm Leanne Jameson.
And we are super excited about today's episode because it's got a dirty word in it. It's actually all about, and even the way that I say that is part of what our conversation is going to be about. Right? Like why is, and we've done the F word, but I think we did different F words.
We did like faith and fear and all that stuff. So today we're talking about the F word that everybody usually thinks of when people say the F word. And I love it, when you were like, sit crooked, talk straight. Okay, the conversation that we're going to have today is about words. It's about language. It's about how we utilize our language. This actually came straight from a listener of, questioning us in the most wonderful way of just like, why all the profanity, what, maybe not why, but just like, what's the purpose? What's the intention of it? Right. And when we think about the intentionality of what we're creating here, it truly is, for women, by women who are looking for real change. So it really ties in everything that I think we stand for, just in the title of our podcast, right? In the name of our podcast, and what we do stand for as far as, the change that we're eliciting, and how do we utilize language to that? Does that enhance, like, how does it impact, right? How does it impact us, our listeners? How does that impact our movement, our mission, right? And what we're trying to convey and who we're trying to convey it to. So,
oh my gosh, I love all of that. There's so many angles to take with this because, like you said, the listener that wrote in was talking, making an observation. I noticed that you used the F word a lot, and even said that's fine.
Yeah.
But then the question was the use of the F word in different settings, different contexts. So in arguments, is using the F word in arguments okay? Do you speak differently or use language differently when you are in front of certain people? And Leanne and I were just sharing about our own personal experiences of that, where, and this is very interesting because normally I would have probably a little bit of judgment about being called inconsistent. So basically, Leanne is more consistent with her language, regardless of what or who she's around. I am inconsistent. Now, I could also flip that on its head and say that's because I am people pleaser and overly aware and empathic, and like I don't want to offend people. Although you wouldn't know that by listening to this show, because I use the F word quite a bit, and I do so with intention, because so much, and this is just my personal story, so much of my life, and like growing up in the church and like purity culture and sin and like language and like just the pressure to be so perfect, and the way that different Bible verses were used as weapons to get certain points across, or and there might be a ton of arguments against everything that I'm about to say, but just know that this is my experience. Right. I grew up feeling that I was a square peg trying to fit into a round hole and never quite fit. And so now when I get the opportunity to kind of like shine bright and I'm kind of like gloves off, like I'm game on, like let's do this. I want to be my most authentic self. Now, does that mean that I walk around and I say like fuck in front of my 10-year-old? No, actually I don't. Because I still have some blocks around, right? Like, and who's heard me curse? Like Lily, oh my gosh, something happened and I yelled, and he was like, Mama, I'm so proud of you for not cursing. Normally I would say like, damn, or like, shit, or right, like I would say something.
Yeah.
And then I would turn to him and be like, that's an adult word. We say that, you don't. Like, sorry, those are the rules. But there's just been such a training and such an indoctrination of like what you should or shouldn't do that I rebel against still so much to this day. Of like, don't tell me how I should talk. Don't tell me how I should express myself. Now, I don't agree with, and I actually saw a TikTok on this recently, where a woman mom she uses the F word quite a bit too, and of course internet trolls are like all over it.
Yeah.
And she's like, you know what? if my 13-year-old has contextually and a very well placed F word and it enhances the sentence and it like, I'm all for it. Now, he's not allowed to say fuck you. He's not allowed to
Right.
call people fucking names. Like, right, he's not allowed, there's certain ways of using the word where she's like, sometimes she's like, I'm proud of him when he's like, when the word fits.
I know. I
Yeah.
remember having that moment with, I can't even remember what the word was, but like one of our kids said it in the perfect context. And I'm like, I mean, can we really get upset about that?
When Sloan does it, I look to Jonathan and I'm like, he's not wrong. Like we might be like, hey buddy, don't say that, or hey, ooh,
Don't
not
say
right,
that
like
at
don't say that
school.
in front of grandma or papa, right? Like don't like whatever, don't say that at school. But it's but there's this, I'm with you, like I'm totally with you. It's kind of like well
Yeah.
placed.
Well done. Well,
Mm,
and
pride.
right. Well, and it's so funny because the person that wrote Katie, he had mentioned George Carlin, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I totally forgot about George Carlin. I haven't watched him in forever, but he has a whole monologue, this whole skit about the word fuck, and where it originated with, and we actually, if you are a Patreon subscriber, you will be able to see Katie and I watching this. Watching.
It's it's really good. He makes some really good points, and he's hilarious. So like
Yeah.
it all goes well together.
It really does. But I mean, like how he was, and again, we can get into the linguistics of it. This would be a great conversation for my one brother who loves to get into language, and like he's philosophy major and he really picks apart. He's so smart that way of like picking apart the dialect. And but George actually talks about, he's like, it was right aside, fuck was like right beside like love and love making. It's
And
like
life,
in
like,
life, yeah.
how did it get such a bad rap after being associated with such great words?
Right? He's like,
And
it's
now
because we fucked it up.
that's my favorite line because we fucked it up. Can you just keep my headphones on? Sorry, y'all. My headphones flew off my head when I laughed at that because it's so true, right? Like and I was going to say we bastardize so much of the English language anyway. And
Right?
so we somewhere somebody decided that that word was going to have a certain meaning and it would carry certain weight. And George Carlin talked about the emotional weight that it carries, right? Like it evokes like this emotion, right? Like,
Right. Well, and it made me start thinking about other words, not just the F word, right? When we get into like what's the emotion behind the F word, it depends on how we utilize it and where we utilize it and
right.
all of that. It could be passion, like he was saying, it's it's love, it's passion. And I think about that too, where sometimes it is. It's like when I get really passionate, it's just like flies out of my mouth, and I don't censor as much as Katie. Going into like free speech and all that stuff. I do. I swear in front of my kids. I swear in front of an audience. I get into it.
Leanne will say the word dick to her son's teacher, which
The fourth
again
grade teacher.
was so well placed. And I would have the same response of like, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. Like,
Right, when I was just like, I can't believe I just said that. I just want to make sure my kid's not a dick. Like,
academically, we know that like even if he gets
right.
a little bit behind, we can catch up. But it's important that my kid's a good kid. I don't want him to be a dick.
I don't want
I
to
want him
treat
to have
people
empathy and be kind,
poorly.
be a good friend.
But so that's
Don't be a
me.
dick
I
like I'm
don't
mean.
censor. I do swear at church. And
You want to talk about religion and swearing for a quick sec, a little bit
yeah,
more?
absolutely.
I used to, and again, I'm sure someone could pull out Bible verses right now about like having your language be pure and not be, I'll look something up later and see if I can find something biblical about it. But it was so deeply ingrained in me that God would be so disappointed, like God would be so angry, and it was kind of a sin.
Mm.
And I grew up learning that a sin is a sin is a sin. There's no sins that are like worse than other sins. A sin in God's eyes is a sin. To which I call bullshit.
Yeah.
I'm not God. I do not know this 1,000%. I would still bet a whole fucking lot, that God cares less about the words that come out of my mouth than he cares about somebody taking somebody's life. You
Yeah.
can't tell me that those are even Stevens. Like, they're not.
Right. I think that it's more of like, carrying what's in your heart rather than what's coming out of your mouth. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, and that translates, right? What comes out of your mouth is often what is in your heart. And so if
True.
you use words maliciously, like "fuck you," that becomes that's not coming from a place of love.
So true.
Unless you're with your siblings and you are just horsing around and
Yeah.
you're like, "Fuck you, I love you." Again, no judgment about anybody's use of the word. But it's just, there's so much that I don't have any judgment about the use of the word, because there was so much judgment that I carried that was like handed to me, and I carried it. I remember getting up out of the movie. Not kidding
I
you.
remember this. I remember when you told me. I wasn't with you, but
early 20s, mid 20s, we were in Kentucky. I got up and left. I turned to Jonathan and I was like, I'm not sitting here listening to this. And I got up and left. And I think about that now, and I think about that movie, and I was like, I want to go back and watch that movie.
Which movie was it? Do you remember?
No, I have to ask Jonathan. He'll remember.
Uh-huh.
But I want to go back and watch it because, one, I probably missed out on some good cinema, right? Because I was so judgy about, right? And two, I let it overshadow the whole intention of like entertainment, and right, like I just let it have so much control over me to where I can't even sit. Again, if it's abusive language, not a fan. Not a fan of abusive, aggressive language.
Right.
But that's different than saying like,
yeah. Or like, I was thinking about it of just when Ed calls me out on something, and I look at him, I'm just like, with a big smile, I'm like, fuck off. It's like this loving, and he just smiles back. I'm like, God, I feel so called out. Yep, okay.
That dynamic that you guys have though is so different than another couple where somebody might say fuck off and it really truly mean like,
right,
go fuck, like just go away.
Yeah.
And that's not the dynamic or the context that you and Ed use it, which again comes back to judgment, which is why we shouldn't judge what other people are saying, because we don't always know the place from which it's coming or the agreement that different people have about that language, right? And so, but you mentioned something earlier about, and this is something that I do think about, I'm guessing that there are some people who do not listen to us because of our language.
Right.
And that bums me out. Like that bums me out. And I have like this dual perspective of, I'm not going to change who I am because, again, sit crooked, talk straight, get comfy, no bullshit. We're not pulling punches. We're not pretending. We're not being inauthentic. We're being ourselves. And so I'm not going to change that. And I would never want someone to walk away from our content and have, although I have no control over this, but I would never want someone to walk away from our content and be like, and totally miss all the points because they got hung up on a word that I could choose to not use, frankly.
Yeah. I mean, like, is that? I mean, I can sit here and say too. It's just like, are those our people then? Right.
Right. Find your people. The people who get you and who are not offended by the word "fuck." Those are your people. The people who are offended, not your people.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. I mean, that's another perspective.
Yeah. I mean, like, I remember one of my current mentors, because now I'm in 2 programs coaching, who I love so much. Anyways, I remember going to one of her, like, I was checking her out. I knew of her because of my colleagues and stuff like that. And so I went to a private event of hers that she was holding virtually. And I just I was like, oh my gosh, I love her energy, this and that. And then she was like, it's because it's fucking powerful. And I was like, she is my fucking person.
like it sealed the deal, right? Like you were like, I already know that I really like and I'm attracted energetically to the person, but the fact that she said that, you were like, done.
Like, because again,
We're
it's just
ended.
like passionate. It's passionate. It's like you just let it down. It's not a horrible word again, unless you utilize it in that way of cutting people down. It
Right.
does. We do put a lot of energy and a lot of emotion behind a lot of these words. Hate and love, and I mean, like, some people can say, like, with the F word, or anything, like, you can rally and you can elicit hate with that. And yes, again, it's the intention behind it. And yes, we cannot control how people take it. And we're not out here saying, fuck everybody and the patriarchy and all of this stuff. It really, I'm not rallying for that. I rally for compassion and understanding people and being open and not shut down. Like you were saying, it's like the judgment. Just staying curious. Shit, I even fucking do that with Trump. I'm just like, that's interesting. Where did that come from? I wonder what happened there, and I wonder why it's impacting me so much, right? Or Biden or anything, right? If you get into any of the politics now, they're sort of fucked.
Well, this is a great use of the word fuck. Like as a country, our current and upcoming leadership potential, we're fucked. We are. God be with us. I pray for
all of us. But
us.
again, it is the intention. It truly is. And you're right? When you think about it, it's just like, the energy behind it, the intention behind it, we can utilize it in different ways. And it does, what's in our heart matches oftentimes, hopefully, what comes out of our mouth, hopefully. And like, what weight are we giving it, and why? That's what I would love to know. Like, why is it so much weight? Because I think about other words too, where sometimes I have like this resistance, or like just it's something that happens within me when I hear the word bitch, right? And or some people, the C word, right? Like, there's, I can't even, like, yeah, like, that's one that I can't say, so I know it holds a lot.
See, what she's talking about is cunt. And the other word that goes along with that word is the word pussy, which we talked about that before with the divine feminine, is that I had a real visceral reaction to the word pussy until I heard it a million times reading the Audible book. And then it was kind of like, why have I been giving that word so much power?
So
such
much
negative
power. Yes.
And so, yeah, so I think, like, I'm with you. Like, I have a hard time with the word bitch. Even, so we have a female dog, and we have, Sloan asked us one time, why did they call, like, what?
Yeah.
Somebody mentioned it, and he was like, that's a bad word. And I was like, well, actually, it also means female. It's not that big. And so sometimes I'll be playful with our dog, and I'll be like, oh, she's my bitch. She's my bitch. And we kind of like be playful, but there still is part of me because there's been such, and this is where, like, I am a little bit like, fuck the patriarchy. That word has been used with such demeaning and hatred, and to call a woman a bitch. And this is my judgment as based on, like, when it comes from a male, feels so disrespectful. And somebody might be listening right now and being like, you are such a contradiction.
I know.
Like, you are such a walking contradiction. And I am.
Right. I accept it. Because I started thinking of, just like when you were saying that, it's just like, it's sort of, I mean, like, when I'm like, I don't want my kid to be a dick, like, that's not appropriate either. Like, that's saying, that's a negative connotation towards, whatever, the males, or I don't know, penises in general. I don't know. Like, what?
I'm not anti-penis for sure. I'm not as bothered by that. Like, I don't want my kid to be a dick. So, okay, this is coming full circle for me mentally and a little bit emotionally. If you're still listening, the language that we use holds with it baggage that comes from our
George Carlin said.
That comes from familial ties. If you've heard your dad call your mom the C word, then, like, that's gonna have extra pain.
Yes.
the more, and this comes back to your point too, of like being curious, I think I would encourage you, listeners, to just start being curious about the language that you use, but what might trigger you when other people use certain language. And is it more triggering when a male uses that word than when a female? For me, I can say yes, there are certain words that
Right.
females can say, and I'm like, that doesn't bother me. A man says it, and I'm like, hold the phone, back up,
Yeah.
time out, one out,
Yeah.
right? And so, like, those are my judgments. But here's the thing: I'm aware. I'm so aware. Thank God, therapy. Like, I have this self-awareness, and I've done the work. But when I get in that place, like, I can do what you just described earlier. Of like, I'm curious now about like when somebody says fill in the blank,
Right.
why that like triggers something inside of me.
Yes.
And then I can get curious about my baggage, right? Things that my family have offered up to me that I've picked up, things that are just experiences in the past. And so I don't know that we should demonize any language. I really am like a fan of free speech,
Yes.
except for hate.
Yes.
That does not fall. Free speech and hate speech are not the same. And we can have a different episode about that if we want to. But the use of language, yes, it conveys emotion. Yes, it conveys sometimes intellect. When you, like we said before, when you have a well placed word, well done.
Yeah.
Right, like
Well,
that.
and studies show that too, where it's just like, even though we have a plethora of different words, like, like intelligence is different than, like, there's different.
Smart is different than being smart.
Yes, actually, absolutely.
That was what, I think you may have mentioned that before we hit record.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But so, and which I'm aware of, I joke around about when I use like big words, where I'm like, the juxtaposition, which is my favorite word, the juxtaposition. I don't even really know if I know what that word means. However, it makes me feel really damn smart when I use it. And but being smart and sounding smart are not the same. They're not the same. So yeah, so fun episode. I am so grateful that my he's actually a family member, reached out and DM'd me on Facebook and was just asked out of curiosity, hey, I'm just curious about this.
Yeah.
I probably haven't seen this family member since I was like 8. No joke.
Holy crap.
No joke.
See, I love it. Isn't it wild? Like, we never know who's listening. Which, again, do we censor ourselves on? Do we raise the awareness? Do we, right? It's, I say no. I think we just do what we do.
I think we try to be our most authentic selves. Well, there's a balance of being authentic and knowing our audience. But see, again, I wouldn't want you to censor yourself, even though I censor myself. Like, right? Like,
right.
It's all fair game.
It really is. And
if it bothers you, get curious.
Get curious. I was going to say, if it bothers you, you can turn it off. You don't have to listen.
If it bothers you, fuck off.
No.
If it bothers you, you can go listen to a different kind of podcast.
Right.
We used to do it, didn't we? Used to at one point we said like there's a language warning on this episode. Now I feel like they're all that way.
I know. It's like earmuffs. In the beginning we were like earmuffs. It's like, if you don't know us by now and you're listening to this with your kids, just know. Although it is,
be prepared to have the conversation. Be prepared to have the conversation of what does that word mean?
Yeah.
Why can't I say it?
Okay, although it is really interesting to see, like, I know that when I find out different people, and again, this goes to like language, it goes to like what we talk about, what we stand for and everything. When I found out that my grandfather was listening to us, I was like, oh shit. I was like, well, I'm not really sure.
I love it. I think it's so funny. Again, I know that I'm a little bit of a contradiction in some of, and even like you're like, I'll just say it, except for when I thought my grandpa was listening, I was like, oh hell no.
What comes to mind though is just like, oh my gosh, he knows about my sex life and how I was sexually aware at 5 years old. Like, oh my gosh.
Sit crooked, talk straight. Like that is what we're here for. We're here for the hard conversations and the uncomfortable conversations because it all leads back to, I think, of self-awareness, which then leads back to self-love.
Absolutely. And that is what we're here for, is that self-awareness of recognizing what is important to us. What is our authentic self? What does that even like mean? And was that fucking, and I censored myself. So I was like, what does that mean? I don't understand. Self-awareness is at the key of everything. Like I was thinking about that. That's like the ultimate ROI is self-awareness. And like, you know what I mean? Because it gives us the opportunity to get curious about why we're, holding on to certain things, or why we are staying in the same pattern, or why we feel unfulfilled, or why, right? Like to get comfortable asking those questions to ourselves, and to know that there's a path, right? There's this path of self-awareness where, Ram Dass, he is just one of my faves, where becoming nobody, where he really talks about this, like, becoming this unbecoming,
Unbecoming, right?
And the power behind that, and just easing, like decreasing, however, the suffering, because we are in so much suffering when we are not self-aware and when we are not aligned with our our authentic self. We always know that there's something missing, and whether that comes out in, like, mine was like blame and depression and anger and frustration and unfulfillment, or like, no matter what I did, I tried so many different things. And then when I understood that part of me, when I started seeing more and more of just like, oh my gosh, like I have been living on autopilot for so much of my life, and it's time to get back to who I am. So whether that involves the word fuck or bitch or cunt or love or compassion or curiosity, like that is where I'm at. And that's that journey back to ourselves of that self-awareness and the gift of self-awareness. And again, sometimes there are those moments where it's just like, can I just go back to being ignorant? Like, it just lasts for a second.
It used to be like ignorance is bliss until you really look back and it's like, no,
it's not. It's really hurtful and harmful to ourselves and to the people around us. So yeah, that's I'll get off my soapbox now, and and I thank your cousin for posing that beautiful question that had us questioning, just like, again, getting curious about, like, why do we and how do we, and language is so powerful. It really is. So I thank you.
Thanks, Sam.
So again, if you want to ever, I know that we mentioned George Carlin, you can look it up on YouTube. He has, like, the F word. He has this whole skit about the F word. It's great. And so true. So I'm really grateful to George Carlin for showing up the way that he did authentically, and bringing it to light, and, for us to bring here too. So we would love to hear your feedback about us using all of it too. And yes, we are so excited that you have been here with us, and we can't wait to hear your feedback and how you view swearing and utilizing different words to emphasize what you want to portray. So until next time, stay compassionate, stay curious, and let your light shine. We are always sending light and love. Mwah.